Before we begin, I want to speak a little bit about what happened today in Australia. We woke up to horrific news out of Australia. There was an awful tragedy, a horrific massacre of Jews celebrating Hanukkah. Just unimaginable brutality, unimaginable viciousness, terror, and evil. And so many people are killed and injured, including actually someone from Texas, one of the rabbis of the Chabad in Texas. I was told in shul this morning that his grandson was one of the ones killed. It's just absolutely tragic and sad and maddening. And the only thing that we can say is what we say in the prayers, where we ask God to avenge before our very eyes the blood of your servants that was spilled, and to hopefully do goodness. Two prayers that we say: do goodness upon us in the merit of those butchered upon your oneness. These are people who died martyrs. They died because they're Jewish and because they're celebrating Hanukkah in Australia. And the Rambam tells us that those people who were killed because they're Jewish, because they're celebrating the festivals, they were targeted only for that. They're the highest souls. Their souls go straight up to heaven. And those souls we have in our prayers. We could say, we tell God, help us, save all of us in the merit of those precious and elevated souls. So we have no words we have no words to talk about this. It's just awful. There's absolute horror, and we hope that the Almighty sees our suffering and brings salvation to all of us. Tonight we celebrate the festival of Hanukkah. And we know the story. The Greeks, they dominate the world and they conquer much of the world, and they conquer not just the land, but they try to conquer the heart. They try to spread not only Greek sovereignty, but also Greek culture. And there's a lot of beauty in the Greek culture, a lot of art and language and gymnasiums and philosophy. And when they conquered the land, they spread their value system to the conquered people. And this was directly at odds, of course, with our nation and what we stand for. To us, there's only one true reality, and that's God. And God's always at the center of our focus, always the epicenter of our life. And the Greeks, they were the darkness that crowded out God, that ignored God. And for 180 years, our people were under the thumb of the Greeks in one way or another. And many Jews, of course, unfortunately, became Hellenists, who were Jews but had absorbed and adopted the ways of the Greeks. So there's a long history, of course. We have Alexander, he conquers Judea, but then his empire splinters, and the Jews are underneath various children, so to speak, of the original Greek Empire, and they integrate a lot in Judea. They build Greek cities all over the land, and they erect libraries to teach, to spread Greek philosophy. And eventually things get so bad when the Greek Empire, Antiochus, he takes a very brutal assault upon Judaism. He tells the Jews, you want to study Torah? That is a capital crime. You want to observe the Shabbos? It's a capital crime. You want to circumcise your children? It's a capital crime. They're trying to deliberately attack the Jewish way of life and to install Hellenism. And they actually go into the temple. They begin to violate the temple. And they would snatch brides from their weddings and violate them. And they installed a pagan deity in the temple. So this reached the point where it was intolerable. And we know the story. There was a revolt. the Maccabees, Matisyahu, and his children, and they fight back. And it's a long story, and it took a long time, but they won. They managed to liberate Jerusalem, liberate the temple, liberate Judea, recapture the land, send the Greeks packing. And we know that at the end of the story, the Greeks who had defiled the temple and defiled all of its sacraments, they left no oil that was pure. And the Jews came and they reestablished and rededicated the temple, but there was no oil. And they found only one flask of oil that would last for only one night. And they said, okay, we'll just light it. And it was a miracle. It lasted for 8 nights. And by that time, they were able to secure new oil, new holy, sanctified oil, new pure oil, and to reestablish the temple on this foundation of purity. And the sages of that time, they established the festival of Hanukkah to remember, to relive, to commemorate this tremendous miracle. Like the Talmud tells us, the Talmud says, well, what's Hanukkah all about? This is the famous Talmud in the book of Shabbos, page 21b. On the 25th of the month of Kislev, we begin Hanukkah. And it's a rabbinic festival, meaning it's a festival that's a Jewish festival, but it's not included in the Torah, happened subsequently. And on these days, we don't eulogize, because it's a festive day, we don't do sad things. And we don't fast. And why is this? Why is this festival enacted? It's because when the Greeks, they entered the temple and they defiled all the oils, and then when the Hasmonean kingdom, they overcame them and they defeated them, they didn't find any oil in the temple, only one small flask that had upon it the signet of the high priest, and it had sufficient oil for 1 day, but there was a miracle, and it lasted for 8 days. And therefore the sages of that time, they established it as happy days, as festive days, as days of praise and thanks for God, and including in that, of course, is the mitzvah of lighting the menorah. This is what happened. There was this incredible conflict, and the conflict ended well. The good guys won. And they managed to clear away all the defilement, clear away the Greeks, and to undo all of the terrible things that they had done. They reestablished Jewish sovereignty for 200 years until the destruction of the Second Temple. There was Jewish self-rule, Jewish autonomy to one degree or another. And the day that this all came to the crescendo, to the climax, that was on the 25th day of Kislev. And they went back to the temple, rededicated it, and this amazing miracle, the oil destined or designed to light for 1 night, for 1 day, it was a daily dose, it lasted for 8. And that's why we have this festival. And that's why we liked the mitzvah, one of the 7 rabbinic mitzvos, to light the Hanukkah candles, to publicize and reveal this miracle. These are the 8 days of Hanukkah. So first of all, it's interesting, we talked about this in the past, that the emphasis of our sages is not on the 25-year campaign against the Greeks. It's not about the military victory, but rather it's about this miracle that happened after the victory, the miracle of the oil. That's the centerpiece. That's the mitzvah. The mitzvah is the lighting of the menorah. And what's that all about? That's to symbolize what happened in the temple, and the miracle that happened in the temple after the Greeks were defeated. Now, how do we fulfill this mitzvah? So the Talmud tells us that the basic way to fulfill it is to light a candle for 8 nights. 8 nights, 8 candles. But those who want to do it even better, they want to fulfill the mitzvah in a better way, well, then every single member of the household will light their own candle. So if there's 5 people in the household, it's 5 candles per night for 8 nights. And the best of the best, the highest way to fulfill this mitzvah is to add a candle every night. So tonight's going to be the first night of Hanukkah. We light one light, and then two lights, and three lights, and so on until we finish Zos Hanukkah, the final day of Hanukkah, with 8 lights. There was an incredible miracle that happened 2,300 years ago, and we relive it, and we publicize it each year on the 8 nights of Hanukkah. We light the menorah, the lights, and we watch the candles, and we put them by our window to publicize it, and we keep it there until there's no more passerby in the street. This is the mitzvah of this day, of these days, of this festival. Now, the laws are actually very stringent. There's a very famous comment in the Rambam where he says the mitzvah of lighting the candles, the menorah of Hanukkah, it's a very cherished mitzvah. And a person has to be very careful to fastidiously and meticulously fulfill this mitzvah. Why? Because you're publicizing the miracle. And it's important to praise God and to thank God for all the miracles that He did for us. And listen to this. Listen to this law. If someone doesn't have food to eat, they're so poor, they're so destitute, they have to go beg for food. All they have is one shirt on their back. They are required by the law to sell their shirt to acquire the oil, the candles, the menorah to publicize this miracle. This is a rarity that the requirement to fulfill the mitzvah is so stringent. If you're so destitute, you still have to fulfill the mitzvah. And even if that means they have to sell your one garment. So of course, if we want to go a bit deeper into this festival, we have to focus on what our sages pointed us to do. A lot of people, they look at Hanukkah, it's more like a holistic celebration. Let's eat fried foods or donuts, latkes. I happen to not like when people try to kind of mimic what the Christians do. I've seen this a few times. Oh, they have their Christmas lights. Okay, well, we'll have our Hanukkah lights. And they have their ugly sweaters. We'll do the Hanukkah ugly sweaters. They have Santa. We have, it's Happy Hanukkah on one side and the celebration of their festival on the other side. We have our menorah. They have their Santa. We have our dreidel. And they have, I don't know, whatever else they have. We don't need to copy them. Our mitzvah is so much richer. Our history is so much richer. And there's something so profound that's happening over here. The sages are telling us that the way we fulfill this mitzvah, the way we tap into the power of what's happening over here, it's by lighting the menorah. We have to understand what that means. What's the actual heart of the matter? What's the deep insight and the meaning of the festival and the mitzvah that was enacted, that was conceived and implemented by the sages to relive this wonderful day? Tonight, we're going to light the menorah. And it's not immediately clear to us what is the connection between our kindling of the menorah today in the 2020s. What does that have to do with the events that happened 2,300 years ago? And I want to share something very profound. And I'm saying very profound because it's profound, but it's very profound. Courtesy of the Hasidic masters. We have a menorah. Our menorah has 8 branches, and a 9th one for the shamash, of course. And there was a menorah in the temple, and that had 6 branches, plus a 7th one in the middle. What's the similarity and or overlap and or connection between our menorah and the menorah in the temple? Now, when someone lights the menorah, they make 2 blessings. Well, the first night they make a 3rd blessing, Shechianu. One blessing is on the mitzvah of lighting the menorah. And the second one is about miracles. We make a blessing to thank God for the miracles that God made for us and for our ancestors. Bayamim ha'hem bazman hazeh. On those days in this time, meaning in antiquity, but during this time of the year. I'm lighting my menorah that I that I own. It has nothing to do with the menorah in the temple, but I'm lighting this menorah and I'm sort of invoking the menorah of the past. We look at it, well, there's some sort of memorial, a remembrance of the miracle of the menorah of the temple. But we're assigning, so to speak, the miracle when we light the menorah. It's also interesting. There's some laws that are a bit counterintuitive. We are forbidden from benefiting from the light of our menorah. That's actually why you light the additional, the ninth light, the shamish. Why? Because in case you actually benefit from the light, you'll attribute the benefit from that additional candle. There's a special liturgical prayer that we say after we light the menorah. And what we say is that these candles, these lamps, these lights that we're lighting, it's upon the miracles and the salvations and the wonders and the wars that you, oh God, you did for our forefathers. Bayamim hahem bazman hazeh. In those days, but in this time. And then we add, V'chol shmona simei Chanukah elu, and for the duration of these 8 days of Chanukah, these lights that I'm lighting are holy, are sanctified. The lights that I'm lighting are holy, and we have no permission to benefit from it. It's sanctified lights, and we have no permission to benefit from it. We can look at it, but we cannot benefit from it. Why is there holiness, sanctification in these candles in the menorah? So again, I want to caution, it's a very profound idea, and it's very surprising what I'm going to tell you. What are we trying to do with the kindling of the menorah? Let's go back to the original miracle. The priests, the Hasmoneans, the Maccabees, they come to the temple. And the temple's been defiled. It's a sacrilege. And they clear away all the defilement. And they want to light the menorah. But alas, we don't have what we need for the menorah. We don't have any oil. But there was a miracle. Even without oil, the menorah was still lit. The essence of the miracle is that when you were missing things that you need for the menorah is still lit. That's the miracle. That the menorah for 8 days can be kindled, can be lit, even if you don't have the requisite hardware or paraphernalia. You don't have oil. You need oil to light. The miracle is that even without the requisite hardware and paraphernalia, for these 8 nights, the menorah can be kindled. So what's the miracle? The miracle of Hanukkah was that even when you are lacking what you typically need to kindle the menorah, it could still be lit. That's the miracle of these 8 days. Say the Hasidic masters. Today, in the 2020s, more than 2,000 years after those events, we don't have what we need to light the menorah. What do we need? We need to be in the Holy Land, and we need to be on Temple Mount. We have to have a temple. We have to have a high priest. We have to have a menorah. We have to have oil. There's so many things that we're missing. We cannot kindle the menorah. But there's a miracle that's active for 8 days. The miracle is that even when you are lacking what you need to light the temple's menorah, to kindle the menorah in the temple, even when you're missing what you need, you could still do it. When someone is lighting the Hanukkah menorah, say the Hasidic masters, they are in effect finding some way to light, to kindle the actual menorah in the temple. But wait, we don't have what we need. We don't have the oil, we don't have the menorah, we don't have the high priest, we don't have the temple. Well, the miracle is that when you don't have what you need, you can still light it. So what our sages did is they captured the power of that miracle and perpetuated forward with this mitzvah. Again, it's an astounding insight, very profound. There's a still active miracle that's present 8 days of the year. And that's kindling the menorah of the temple, even though you don't have what it takes, even though you're missing some of the requirements to do so. You don't have enough oil, or you don't have a menorah, or you don't have a temple, or you don't have a high priest, or you don't even live in the land. With the mitzvah of kindling our menorah, we're able to effectuate, to evoke the light of the menorah in the temple. The temple and its vessels, our sages tell us, they didn't go extinct. Where's the menorah today? Where's the art today? We don't know. What we do know is that it's still intact. It's hidden away. There's almost like the temple is still active. It's just not visible. It's not available. So we can't use them because we don't have them. We don't have all the necessary criteria to have them. But what if there's 8 days where the menorah can be kindled via a miracle? Well, then, if that miracle is still active today, then those candles can still be lit today using that miracle, piggybacking on that miracle. We said that the lights are holy. They're sanctified. We cannot benefit from it. Well, I'm lighting in Houston, Texas. Why is there holiness in my candles? Again, this is what the Hasidic masters are telling us. Those lights are not just random lights that I'm doing to remember some long forgotten event or long extinct event. There's holiness in our menorah that is on some level equivalent to the actual kindling of the menorah in the temple, and therefore, of course, it's sanctified. And of course, you cannot benefit from it in any mundane fashion. Again, this is a earth-shattering insight that our sages are telling us. If you think about it, it answers another fundamental question that we have to ask. Yeah, there was a miracle. We had enough oil for one day. It lasted for 8. That's a miracle. Wow, amazing. How many miracles happened in the temple? So we have a Mishnah. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, chapter 5, tells us that there were 10 miracles that were ever present in the temple. And it lists them. Miracle number 1. Even though there was sacrificial meat being barbecued at all times, and there were millions and millions and millions of people that were passing by through the temple over the course of its years of activity. And when you pass the barbecue, you get such a craving. The smell of the roasting meat, amazing. Miracle number 1, says the Mishnah, there was never a pregnant woman who had a craving for the barbecue of the temple meat, of the sacrificial meat being roasted. No pregnant woman ever had a miscarriage due to that aroma. That's the first miracle. Second miracle. No sacrificial meat ever spoiled, ever. Over the course of centuries, with no refrigeration, it never spoiled. And there was never, miracle number three, there was never a single fly in the butchery. Of course, after the meat was slaughtered, so many different types of sacrifices, of course, but the meat had to be butchered. So you would imagine it would be swarming with bugs. Never a single fly. And the high priest never had a seminal emission that would invalidate him for doing service on Yom Kippur. And even though the temple was outdoors, the water, the rain water, never extinguished the fire atop the altar. And the pillar of smoke was never swayed away by a wind. And there was never a disqualification in the Omer, in the Shtei Alechem, in the Lechem Apanim, three offerings. And even though when the entire nation would enter the temple grounds, everyone would be packed together like sardines, when they would bow before God, there was plenty of room for everyone. And when the temple was active, there was never a single incidence. There was never a single instance of a snake or a scorpion injuring someone in Jerusalem. And there was never a time, no matter how many people came to Jerusalem, there was never a time that there was not room for one more person. You can always just put down a cot, and there's always room for someone else. Okay, this is a list of 10 miracles that were ever present in the temple. What it's telling us is that miracles were ubiquitous in the temple. Even the menorah itself, the western lamp never got extinguished, ever. For hundreds of years, it was never extinguished. It was a miracle. So there's lots and lots and lots of miracles in the temple. So why are we pointing out, oh, there's one miracle that we have to really relive? 8 days. For thousands of years, we have to remember that one miracle in particular. Now we know why. It's special. It's different. There were miracles in the temple. You have a temple, and you have all the necessary requirements of the temple, and then there's miracles. There's one miracle that's different. It's a miracle without a temple, without the oil, without the necessary components of the temple operating as it must. The miracle is that when you don't have what's needed for the temple, nevertheless, you have the light. Today, we don't have a temple. We don't have a high priest. We don't have the holy menorah in Jerusalem. We don't have the oil. We don't have anything. But we have this one miracle that's still active for 8 days. And that miracle says when you don't have what you need, you can still kindle the menorah. Basic components are missing. We can still experience the light of the menorah in the temple. And the way we do that is with this very special mitzvah of lighting the Hanukkah candles. That's what the Hasidic masters tell us. Now, it's important to remember, for the cynics amongst us, this is not hyperbole. If the great Hasidic masters, they say something so lofty, so powerful, they would never say something like that unless they actually experienced it. These people weren't spitballing ideas, brainstorming, workshopping. They're telling us there's a way to experience the menorah in the temple when it's been almost 2,000 years since the temple was destroyed. And they experienced it. And for us to do that, you have to work really hard. You have to prepare. You have to be ready. You have to be engaged. You have to be active. But there is a way to do it even today. This amazing insight completely, radically reshapes, reframes, recasts the festival, recasts the mitzvah of the festival. It's not a reminder of the miracle, a reminder of the menorah in the temple. When we kindle the menorah, it's a reenactment of the kindling of the menorah in the temple, courtesy of that miracle, courtesy of the miracle of Hanukkah, which is still active during these 8 days. We don't have a temple. We don't have the vessels. We don't have a tabernacle. We don't have a menorah. We don't have a high priest. We have nothing besides for a menorah for 8 days. Let's try to bring this to maybe a more practical level for us to have a higher level of experience during these days. You light the menorah. You're sitting in front of it. And again, our sages are telling us you're sitting in front of the menorah. It's your mitzvah, but there's power in those lights on some degree, power akin to the actual lights in the temple. What am I supposed to think? How am I supposed to absorb some of those lessons and make something more real and practical inside of me? So maybe the question really is about, okay, what does the menorah in the temple signify? What does it symbolize? And whatever it does symbolize, that's what we can connect with on these days. So what our sages tell us is that the menorah in the temple, in the tabernacle, it symbolizes wisdom, specifically the wisdom of Torah, specifically the wisdom that originates in Torah. There was that Western lamp that we mentioned that was always illuminated. And the reason why it was the Western lamp is because it was the one that's closest to the ark. The ark housed, of course, the tablets, both sets of tablets, the one that was destroyed and the one that was not destroyed. And that symbolizes Torah. And the ark, we know this very well. The ark was gold inside, gold outside. A Torah still has to be gold inside, gold outside. Everything about the ark symbolizes Torah. That the crown that goes around the ark is the crown of Torah. And that Torah is spread. The transmission of that light of Torah is spread outwardly with the menorah. That's what Sages tell us. That's the power of the menorah in the temple. It's to take the wisdom of Torah that's in the ark, that's in the tablets, and to spread it forward, to disseminate it outwardly. Now, if you think about it, this was essentially the crux of the battle, of the spiritual, philosophical battle against the Greeks. The Greeks were renowned for wisdom, for very advanced wisdom. Greek philosophy, that changed the whole world. And a lot of the basic insights in philosophy and in government and science that dominate the world today have their roots in the Greeks. We're a people that are obsessed with wisdom. And we have this antagonist that's also obsessed with wisdom. So why are we at odds? Why is there this war? Why is it considered to be an exile, that we're in the Greek exile for 180 years? The dispute is not wisdom or no wisdom. The dispute is on the origin of the wisdom. Our wisdom is captured by the menorah. It comes from God. It comes from God's Torah. All of our wisdom falls into that framework. They have wisdom, but it has a different set of values. You could call it science, humanism, whatever you want to call it. It's wisdom divorced, ostensibly, from God. What they try to do is to get us to forget the Torah, meaning to forget that the wisdom of existence originates in God and in Torah. They wanted to specifically defile the temple, not to destroy it, defile it. Have a menorah, have wisdom. Make sure it's not connected, though, to holiness, to purity, back to God, back to the Torah. There's a very famous midrash on the second verse in the Torah. V'ha'aretz, and the land was sohu vavohu, empty, desolate, v'choshech, and darkness, al panei tehom, on the face of the abyss. There's emptiness, there's vacuousness, there's a void, there's darkness on the surface of the deep. What does this all mean? So the Midrash tells us this is a reference to the four exiles that our people had to endure. Of course, the alpha exile is Egypt, but once we were formed as a nation, there were four different periods when our people were in exile. Under the Babylonians, under the Persians and the Medes, under the Greeks, and of course under Edom, which is the current and final exile. Says the Midrash, these four words, tohu, vavohu, v'choshech, al pnei tehom, which is like emptiness and desolateness and darkness on the face of the deep, on the surface of the deep, they correspond to the four different exiles. And the exile under the Greeks, the Galus Yavan, the exile of the Greeks, is known as darkness, is choshech. The Greeks, they had everything. They had wisdom, Greek philosophy. The Greeks are all about wisdom. But their form of wisdom is dark, in the words of the Torah. Our wisdom comes from God. And if you try to divorce God, God forbid, from wisdom, it's darkness. And they specifically targeted the Torah because they wanted only human intellect. And they rebelled against the existence of divine, of godly intellect. And that's what they targeted, the wisdom of Torah. It's important to note that we don't reject Greek wisdom. It's a little well-known fact that the Torah can be written in two languages, in Hebrew, of course, and in Greek. There's beauty of Yefes, of Japheth. And that beauty we don't reject. The three sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Yafes, we come from Shem. We're Semites from Shem. But the Torah tells us, Yaft Elokim liyafes. There's beauty in Yafes. And Yafes is the forebearer of Europe, of the Greeks. Yaft Elokim liyafes. There's beauty in Japheth, v'yishkon be'ahal Shem, provided that it dwells in the tents of Shem. We have the tents of Torah. And we don't divorce the beauty of Japheth from the tent of Shem. That's what the Greeks tried to do. Take all this beauty and philosophy and remove it from God. They want that menorah, yes, but a menorah untethered, unconnected to the Holy of Holies, unconnected to the tablets, unconnected to the ark, unconnected from the Creator. That was the battle. Our wisdom versus their wisdom. Our menorah, the sanctified, pure menorah of the temple, versus some sort of light, some sort of wisdom, illumination that's unsanctified, that's removed from God, and in our definition, that is darkness. So maybe this is one idea, one element of the festival. We're sitting in front of the menorah. Which menorah is it? If we work really hard, we can maybe discover that the lights is actually the lights of the menorah of the temple, because that's the power of the miracle. The power of the miracle is when you don't have what you need, you can still evoke those sanctified lights. Those lights are holy. And the menorah reminds us that we're trying to absorb light and wisdom that originates in the Holy of Holies, in the Ark. And we're trying to remember that all wisdom, all insight comes from God and from His Torah. There is nothing in the world that is disconnected, divorced, separated, severed from God. Nothing can have any existence. It's just emptiness, desolation, darkness, unless it's connected deeply with the heavenly spheres. That's the menorah. That's what it symbolizes, the light of Torah. We live in a world that's very far from this idea. Yes, we're privileged. We're privileged that we have a connection. We have a desire to learn the Almighty's Holy Torah. We're the absolute minority. The overwhelming majority of the world doesn't have an awareness of Torah, doesn't have an interest in Torah, doesn't have a familiarity with Torah. They're living in darkness. Not because they're not wise, they could be very wise. But the power of the Greeks, the threat, the exile of the Greeks, it still exists to one level or another. And that's what we're trying to fight back with our menorah. Nothing is divorced from God. And all wisdom, all illumination, all brilliance, all light, truthfully, comes from there. It's a deeper understanding of the mitzvah, it's a deeper understanding of the festival. It's a deeper understanding of the miracle of Hanukkah. And it gives us a lot of work. How do you actually feel it? I've lit the Hanukkah menorah many times. And I never felt I'm looking at the menorah of the temple. I never felt that. This is what our sages are telling us. This maybe is why you have to really work hard. This is not a mitzvah that you just experience without investment. How can we actually feel it? How can we actually connect ourselves with the essence of this mitzvah and miracle? You want to tap into the reenactment of the kindling of the menorah that's going to be available for 8 days. How do we do it? So maybe this is something that maybe there's multiple ways to do it. But the Hasidic masters offer one way to do it. What is a miracle? A miracle is a transcendence of the mundane. There's like this regular strata of existence where there's cause and effect and there's the laws of physics. And there's something else that's way above that, that's supernatural, that transcends the regular. To the degree that a person is embedded in the physical, the material, the natural, the mundane, they will be incapable of experiencing the miraculous, the supernatural, the transcendental. You want to feel a little bit about the origin of the menorah, the temple? We're trying to transcend the natural. That's what a mitzvah really is. A mitzvah is to connect a person with that it's above the ordinary. That's what a mitzvah is. You do a mitzvah, the mitzvah of the menorah. Try to remove yourself to some degree from this ordinary realm of existence and connect yourself with something that is above this realm of existence. And maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to sense a little bit about what's really, really happening behind the scenes. We have 8 days. We have extra prayers. We say the Hallel, words of praise and thanks to God. We're not going to subsist with a low-level fulfillment of this festival. Let me really, really get my macros in. Lots and lots of fried food. Nothing wrong with those customs. But the essence of these days, to praise God, to thank God. Why? Because that's really where existence is at. And I want to kind of remove myself from this view of the world of cause and effect and all the natural consequences of things. And I want to connect myself with the supernatural. If I do that, and I do it with the mitzvah, who knows? Maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to sense ourselves that when we're kindling the menorah, what's actually happening here is the miracle of Hanukkah is being activated. And the miracle that tells us that when you don't have what it takes to kindle the menorah, nevertheless, for 8 days, you can kindle the menorah of the temple. We should all be fortunate to sense that, to perceive that, and to have a transformative and happy Hanukkah. I appreciate you listening to this. It's, like I said, it's very profound, but that's what we do here. This is the Torch Center. Torch Center, we're trying to be the bearers of that light. Maybe we'll have the experience to actually sense it ourselves. If you do, and you have that experience, let me know about it. Send me an email, rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. Go ahead, Harv. Your
I have a
hands up
I have
fast.